What's wrong, baby? Okay, what is it first?
Inside a small interrogation room in Mississippi, a 13-year-old boy sat across from two investigators. Hours later, he would sign a confession to murder. The victim was his own brother-in-law. There was just one problem. Almost everything in the confession was impossible.
Look at me. Did you for real do that, or are you just telling him that?
13-year-old Tyler Edmonds was a dedicated honor student and a regular at his local church. He had no history of violence or rebellion. Most people described him as a kind child who lived to please the adults in his life. With his slight frame and facial features, he bore a striking resemblance to the fictional character Harry Potter. This innocent image was completely opposite to the situation unfolding inside the Oktibbeha County Sheriff's Office. Tyler was suddenly thrust into a high-stakes interrogation regarding the capital murder of Joey Fulgham. While his mother Sharon frantically entered the station, she was unaware that investigators were already cornering her son. Today, we're going to look into the disturbing details of a boy caught in a web of manipulation and a deeply flawed search for justice. Joey Fulgham was a 29-year-old computer technician working at Mississippi State University. He lived in the Longview community of Starkville, trying to navigate a marriage that was publicly falling apart. His wife, Christy Fulgham, was Tyler's half-sister and 14 years older than the boy. The couple's domestic struggles were so intense that they actually sought a resolution on national television. In the year 2000, they appeared on an episode of The Montel Williams Show. During the segment, Christy admitted to the cameras and to Joey that her third child was not biologically his. This level of betrayal would be enough to end most relationships, yet they stayed together in a cycle of toxicity. As investigators looked closer at their lives, they started to find reasons why Christy might want Joey gone. She stood to inherit a $300,000 life insurance payout upon his death. This massive financial gain became a primary focus for the prosecution as they pieced together the events leading up to that fateful May morning. Christy Fulgham was far more than just an older sibling in Tyler's life. At 27 years old, she was a mother of 3 and 14 years older than her younger half-brother. The two shared the same biological father, Danny Edmonds, and that connection gave Christy a powerful emotional influence over the boy. After Danny and Tyler's mother divorced when Tyler was 4, contact between father and son became extremely limited. As Tyler grew older, he desperately wanted to know his father. Christy stepped into that void. She secretly arranged weekend visits between Tyler and Danny without their mother's knowledge, creating a bond that Tyler believed only she could provide. That arrangement gave Christy tremendous leverage over him. Over time, she began using Tyler to help manage the chaos in her personal life. When she was involved in extramarital relationships, Tyler was often asked to lie to Joey or other boyfriends to cover her tracks. He also spent time helping care for her children and assisting with household tasks. These requests slowly normalized dishonesty and obedience in their relationship. At one point, Christy even attempted to convince Tyler that she should become his legal guardian instead of his mother. She brought him to the Department of Human Services to explore custody options, despite there being no evidence of abuse or neglect at home. By the spring of 2003, Tyler's loyalty to his sister was deeply ingrained. In one school essay from that time, he wrote that he loved Christy more than he loved himself, and wanted to feel bad so she could feel better. Christy understood exactly how powerful that devotion was. In the weeks leading up to Mother's Day weekend, she repeatedly asked Tyler to bring an old .22 caliber rifle from his home. She claimed there was a stray dog running around that needed to be killed. Tyler resisted at first because he disliked harming animals. Friends later testified that he refused to hunt because he believed animals were too beautiful to kill. Eventually, he gave in and brought the gun, believing it barely worked. What Tyler did not realize was that this small act of obedience would soon place him at the center of a murder investigation. Ironically, the choice of weapon also provides some of the strongest evidence for Tyler's innocence. The rifle was an older model that featured a difficult plunger mechanism. To fire the weapon, a person had to pull back a heavy metal bolt with significant force before pulling the trigger. Forensic experts and those familiar with Tyler's physical stature noted that a 13-year-old boy of his size would have struggled immensely to operate the plunger. It was a weapon designed for an adult's strength, yet it would soon become the centerpiece of a story that claimed a child was a cold-blooded executioner. The events that led to Joey Fulgham's death began on the afternoon of May 9th. Christy Fulgham finally picked Tyler up around 4 o'clock and drove him to Joey's home in the Longview community near Starkville. The house was still a shared residence despite their troubled relationship. At one point that evening, Christy went into the backyard and attempted to fire the old .22 caliber rifle Tyler had brought with him. The weapon failed to fire just as he expected. A short time later, Joey returned home. The group went out together to buy Subway sandwiches before settling in for the night. Joey eventually went to bed while Christy stayed awake using the computer. Tyler remained nearby, lying on the floor at her feet until she eventually told him to sleep in one of the children's rooms. Several hours later, around 4 in the morning, Tyler was awakened by an alarm Christy had set. She told him to gather one of her children, place the home computer in the car, and start the engine. Still half asleep, Tyler followed her instructions and waited in the driver's seat while Christy remained inside the house. As he sat alone in the darkness, he heard a single pop coming from inside. Tyler thought little of the sound. Christy owned a cat that frequently knocked objects over during the night, and nothing about the noise seemed unusual. Moments later, she walked outside, closed the trunk, and climbed into the car. She handed Tyler a wallet and told him to place it in the glove compartment. Then they drove away. Tyler believed they were heading to his father's home in Columbus, but the route soon changed. Christy explained that their plans had shifted. They would first pick up her boyfriend Kyle Harvey in Jackson before traveling south to the Gulf Coast for the weekend. After meeting Kyle, the group continued to Biloxi where they checked into the Beau Rivage resort. Christy paid for the trip using cash she had taken from Joey's wallet. Over the next 2 days, their activities appeared completely ordinary. They spent time at the beach, rode sea-doos near the waterfront, and blended in with the crowds enjoying Mother's Day weekend along the coast. Meanwhile, back in Starkville, Joey Fulgham's body was eventually discovered inside his home. Tyler would not learn the truth until Sunday afternoon during the drive back north. After dropping Kyle off in Jackson, Christy received a phone call informing her that Joey had been found dead. She did not explain what had happened to Tyler right away. Only after arriving at her parents' home in Meridian did she finally break down and reveal the reality of the situation. According to Tyler, that was the moment Christy admitted that she had killed Joey, and it was also the moment she asked her 13-year-old brother to take the blame. The pressure inside the Oktibbeha County Sheriff's Office reached a breaking point on the evening of May 12th. Investigators had already spent hours questioning Christy, who eventually pointed the finger at her 13-year-old brother. In a highly controversial move, detectives brought the siblings together in an interrogation room. Christy sat there in shackles, and as she reached out to squeeze Tyler's hand, she gave him the rehearsed signal. She told him to tell the truth, but in their world, the truth was a fabricated story designed to save her from the death penalty. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Tyler began to weave a narrative that defied the laws of physics. Under the immense weight of police scrutiny, he claimed that he and Christy had both held the rifle and pulled the trigger simultaneously. It was a two-shooter theory that served no logical purpose other than to spread the legal culpability. When Tyler hesitated or showed confusion, the deputies didn't back down. At one point, a deputy sternly asked if the boy was calling him a liar. Faced with adult authority figures and a sister he adored, Tyler finally broke. He told investigators that he simply closed his eyes and did it. This confession was the primary piece of evidence the state needed, despite the fact that a .22 caliber rifle is not designed for two people to fire at once. The physical impossibility of the act was ignored in favor of a signed statement from a terrified child. The reality of the situation only set in for Tyler when the interrogation ended and he realized he wasn't going home. As his mother was ushered out of the station, the video captured a heart-wrenching moment of Tyler screaming for her not to leave him. He had traded his freedom for a lie, believing Christy's promise that his age would protect him from any real consequences. He was about to find out how wrong she was. The 2004 trial of Tyler Edmonds became a national spectacle that tested the limits of the American legal system. Prosecutor Forrest Allgood and his assistant, Missy Favor, adopted a remarkably aggressive strategy for a case involving a 13-year-old defendant. They were determined to strip away the public's perception of Tyler as a vulnerable child. During her closing arguments, Favor stood before the jury and physically pointed at the young boy. She urged the jurors to look beyond what she called his boyish Harry Potter looks. She argued that if he were a grown man of 6 feet tall, the public sympathy would vanish. The prosecution successfully convinced the jury to ignore the lack of physical evidence and the mechanical impossibility of the shooting. The prosecution also relied on testimony from forensic odontologist Dr. Michael West, a figure whose methods had already been criticized in multiple wrongful conviction cases. Despite his age and the clear signs of manipulation by his sister, Tyler was found guilty of murder. The judge sentenced the teenager to life in prison, marking one of the darkest chapters in Mississippi's judicial history. Tyler was led away in handcuffs, a child condemned to spend the rest of his life behind bars for a crime he did not commit. Prison could have been the end of Tyler's story, but his family refused to give up. His mother fought relentlessly to expose the flaws in the case, while his defense team continued to challenge the conviction. Their efforts eventually reached the Mississippi Supreme Court. In 2008, the court overturned Tyler's conviction after ruling that key evidence had been improperly handled during the trial. Jurors had heard questionable expert testimony suggesting 2 people could have fired the rifle together, while critical evidence about Christie's possible motives had been excluded from the defense. Because of these errors, the court ordered a new trial. When Tyler returned to court, the prosecution's case quickly unraveled. Without the flawed testimony and under closer scrutiny, the confession that had once secured a conviction no longer carried the same weight. The jury acquitted Tyler of all charges. In 2010, he filed a civil lawsuit against Oktibbeha County. The case eventually ended in a settlement, and in 2017, Tyler received $135,000 in compensation for the years he lost. Free at last, Tyler transformed his traumatic experience into a life of service. He trained as an emergency medical technician and became a vocal activist for juvenile justice reform. Today, he works to ensure that no other child is subjected to the same systemic manipulation. His message remains clear and unwavering. He believes that the state took advantage of his naivety and that children must be protected from such predatory legal tactics. Tyler continues to support his mother and advocate for change, proving that he was always exactly who his family claimed he was. He stood up for himself when the system failed him, leaving behind a legacy of resilience. What do you think about the tactics used in this case? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.